Part 3. Trump. Okay, so we have this counterpuncher from Queens, New York, who is comfortable with blue-collar workers as much as he's comfortable with kings and potentates around the world with whom he's done business and whatnot. Who brings a business acumen and a way of negotiating and deal making and winning, an environment of winning, to his campaign. And he's blustery about it. He's somewhat self-aggrandizing about it. He speaks in absolutes. Everything is the highest, the lowest, the biggest, the smallest, the fastest, the slowest, the greatest, the worst. And he talks to people about people like that, and about things. And he doesn't equivocate. He doesn't sit on the fence. You know exactly what he thinks. And he's, prone to exaggeration. None of this was attractive to me because I don't like absolutes. I mean, I do live in a black and white world and not a gray world as much as possible. But even I know that if you're going to be accurate when talking, it's very hard to just out and out say something is the best, or the greatest, or the biggest, or the smallest, or whatever, without backing it up. He never backs anything up. He just says things off the cuff. And he does this for a reason. He's probably brought up or grown up to know that in order to win, you have to couch things, you have to phrase things in a certain manner that lets people know that you are on it. You have owned it. That you are going to run with it. You have to eliminate all doubt. You have to eliminate all question as to whether you are capable or whether you have any, hesitation about something. It's going to happen. It's going to be done. And then it creates a mindset, and it creates a movement, and it creates a mentality, and it creates an energy that's positive. And you run through, Trump has basically run through his life in this, surrounded by a somewhat self-made positive energy that has allowed him to be successful. And so he thinks and talks and acts in a certain way that puts some people off, people who tend to be more hesitant, who tend to be a little more introspective about things, people who tend to be a little bit more cautious, risk averse, what have you. And I have some of those tendencies, so that's why I don't tend to like his way of talking or communicating. It's a little over the top for me. And of course, when it also is evident when he's trying to debate someone or when he's trying to, put someone down. He tends to put them down in a way that puts them all the way down. And, it's very off-putting. And people did not see that before, at least not in their lifetimes. It's surely happened in the past. As we've discussed, the politics of the 19th century were probably far worse than today, or at least as bad. But not in anyone's lifetime they'd seen somebody talk as a presidential candidate, talk the way Donald Trump talked. And so they started to ascribe, at least the left did, they started to ascribe all sorts of evil intentions and evil doings to him. They start to stick labels and read into words and actions and meanings and gestures that were completely of their own creation, in order to try to not just explain Donald Trump, but to try to pigeonhole him as this adversary who is beyond the pale, who is distinctly and uniquely abhorrent, and who is unfit as a result to be president. Meanwhile, he's beating them up. Everywhere he goes, everything he says, he's just hammering them. The red meat is flying. The Republicans who have been waiting for this for decades are eating it up. And the left misinterprets that too. They see a bunch of rabid dogs eating red meat. What they're not really seeing is the truth. The truth is these people got hungry for a long time. And when hungry people finally get a piece of food to eat, they look like wild dogs. The left misinterpreted and continues to this day to misinterpret everything about Trump. They do not understand him in any way. And so they always ascribe something bad, evil about him. They don't understand the words that come out of his mouth. They don't understand the tweets that he sends out on Twitter. They don't understand the things he says or does or whatever. So they assign something bad to it. They assume something bad is meant by it. They made up this term called dog whistling to try to explain how somehow all these awkward phraseology that comes out of his mouth, all this awkward phraseology, is somehow picked up by we on the right to mean something he didn't actually say, but we're supposed to all know exactly what he meant. Well, the problem is only the left is interpreting what he meant beyond what he actually said. We understand the crazy talk now, anyway. We understand what he means by it, and we understand where it's coming from. The left does not, nor do they wish to. And so it's a lot worse for them. It's always going to sound worse for them, and they're always going to make it sound worse for them for their own purposes. So while they're saying we're the ones getting dog whistled to believe that a certain thing might be a call to action to become violent or to become more racist or more hateful or more this or that, they're the only ones actually making that stuff up. They're the only ones actually ascribing and assuming that that's what he means. We on the right are not. And so it's a dog whistle nobody's hearing because it doesn't exist. While Donald Trump was president, or candidate, for that year during the debates, and then later on when he was going up against Hillary, the left started to recognize a number of things. As he kept winning the debates and then he kept winning the early primaries, he became a bigger and bigger threat. He became more of a real threat. The laughter started to stop, and the concern started to creep in. And so, around the spring time of 2016, the Democrats started to get a little bit concerned and a little bit more serious about him. So while Hillary is cheating her way to a candidacy against Bernie Sanders, she is also pulling some shenanigans behind the scenes. Now, the left went a little nutty against Trump outwardly for all to see, with the help of Hollywood, media, academia. There was a lot of nuttiness going on just in front of the cameras. But what we didn't know is there was stuff going on behind the cameras. There were actual things being done, put into motion to undermine Donald Trump's candidacy, I should say. Even before he was the nominee, when Ted Cruz was still fighting hard against him. And before some other candidates hadn't yet decided to give up the ghost, like John Kasich and others who were clearly not going to win, but thought it was their duty to fight against Donald Trump. We were getting it, and he was getting it from all sides. Hillary Clinton used the Clinton Foundation and its millions of dollars to begin what has become one of probably the nation's biggest scandals to date. Along with the DNC, they hired a law firm, Perkins Coie, to find a person who would get dirt on Donald Trump, and specifically dirt relating to whatever relationship or relations, business or otherwise, that he happened to have with Russia. Perkins Coie, the law firm, hired a company called Fusion GPS, who had a employee whose husband worked at the Department of Justice. The number 4 guy at the Department of Justice, in fact. And this company called Fusion GPS was an op-ed research firm. And it had been used by Republicans to get information about Democrats, too. They did it both ways. But for the most part, they were handled by liberals who were more happy to go after Republicans. But this time, it wasn't just op-ed research. This time, they were after salacious dirt. And if they didn't find it, they didn't care if it was made up or not. Because of the connection with the guy who was working at the DOJ, this lady at Fusion GPS used her husband's DOJ contact, an ex-British Secret Service agent named Steele, who had an animus against Trump and who also had ties in Russia and sources in Russia that he could use to find any dirt that may exist. And so Fusion GPS, through this DOJ guy, hired Steele to first get whatever dirt he could. And of course, what ended up happening is this guy Steele couldn't find any real dirt. So he made stuff up. And he put it in a dossier, what is now known as the phony Trump dossier, claiming that Trump was party to all sorts of disgusting acts and party to or witnessed or involved in all sorts of sexual proclivities and whatnot in Russia, and a few other unmentionable things with regard to business dealings and some other things. And he put it all in a nice little bow, and he handed it to Fusion GPS. Bought and paid for by Hillary Clinton. And then there was a coordination between the Department of Justice, Obama's Department of Justice, and the FBI, Obama's FBI. Remember, Obama was still president. And the coordination was that this dossier was going to be held, theoretically, until later on in the campaign when needed. But it was also leaked to the media at some point, well before it was ever going to be released, so that the rumor of some big October surprise would come out before it actually did. And we've had discussions about the details of this scandal and how the FBI spent virtually no time at all finding a way to exonerate Hillary Clinton, and actually wrote her the letter of exoneration before they even interviewed her or 17 other potential witnesses. How they gave immunity to the 15 closest people to Hillary, so none of them would ever be in jeopardy. All the people who were probably guilty, leaving no one left to prosecute because they all had immunity. And how Hillary got off scot-free. All the stuff that she was guilty of with regard to her email scandal. And then the same group of lefties from the FBI and DOJ who were in charge of handling Hillary's so-called investigation jumped from that investigation, same people, right into the Trump-Russia collusion investigation, which, by the way, hasn't ended. 600 days of investigating and finding nothing but a couple people who lied under oath about something else. And we're still not done. Hillary's investigation was over before it started. Trump's never ends. And you're telling me that's just justice? The way it was going to happen? That's fair? No, that's the sign there's two separate rules. One's for Democrats and Clintons, and one's for Republicans. And maybe one's for everyone else. There might be 3 sets of rules. I don't know. Anyway, in front of the scenes and behind the scenes, they were trying to derail the Trump train. They were trying to get him. Then remember, of course, we had all those so-called women who so-called had affairs and sexual whatnot with Trump. And as soon as he got elected, they all disappeared. Poof, gone. They tried that trick. They tried everything under the sun. And none of it worked. On the 4th part, we're going to talk about what mentality the left had and what basically broke them on election night. Catch you on the next one.